When my father died, I broke down in tears. My mum? She laughed and said, "You always were a weak little girl." So when the time came to read Dad's will, I made sure she'd finally learn what loss feels like. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I was 26 when my father died. His name was David, and he meant everything to me. He had a warm laugh, big hands that always felt safe, and he believed in me even when no one else did. One day, out of nowhere, he collapsed from a heart attack. Just like that, he was gone. I was in shock. I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. But when I looked to my mother, Carol, for comfort, she didn't even blink. She just looked at me and said, "You always were a weak little girl. Crying won't bring him back." That moment broke something in me. She rushed through the funeral arrangements like it was a boring chore. She didn't let me speak at the service, didn't let me choose the flowers, didn't even invite a few of Dad's closest friends. When I asked why she was acting so cold, she snapped, "There's no use dragging it out. He's dead. We move on." But I couldn't move on. Something didn't feel right. After the funeral, Mum told me not to worry about the will. "It's all taken care of," she said, but I wasn't convinced. My dad and I had talked just a few months before he passed. He told me he was updating his will, that he wanted to make sure I'd be okay. So why was she brushing it off? I started asking questions, but every time I brought it up, she changed the subject, or she'd glare at me and say, "Are you accusing me of something? Don't be ungrateful." I knew I had to find out the truth. Late one night, I went into my dad's old home office. Mum hadn't touched anything in there. Maybe she thought it didn't matter. I opened drawers, flipped through files, and there, buried under some old paperwork, I found it. A letter in Dad's handwriting, and something else, a different version of his will. My hands were shaking as I read it. This one mentioned me by name. It left me the lakeside cabin he loved, and most of his life insurance. But that wasn't the version Mum had shown the lawyer. I sat there frozen. My heart was pounding, but I felt something new rising inside me. Not sadness, not fear, determination. If Mum thought she could erase me from Dad's life, she had another thing coming. I wasn't that weak little girl anymore, and I was going to prove it. The morning after my father's funeral, I woke up to the sound of garbage bags being dragged across the floor. When I stepped into the living room, I saw my mum, Carol, dumping Dad's clothes into black trash bags. His jackets, shoes, even his old baseball cap, all of it, gone. I stood there, stunned. "What are you doing?" I asked quietly. She didn't even look at me. "Cleaning up. There's no point keeping dead men's things." My throat tightened. "Can we at least wait a few days? I'm not ready to let go of his stuff." Carol rolled her eyes and kept tossing things. "You think grief gives you time off from life? Grow up, Lauren. People die. That's how it works." I wanted to scream, but instead, I just stood there, watching her treat his memory like trash. That night, I tried to talk to her. I thought maybe she was just hurting in her own way. "I miss him so much," I whispered. "Everything reminds me of him." She didn't even blink. "You think you're the only one who lost something," she snapped. "I lost a husband. You lost a father. Don't act like your pain is bigger than mine." That shut me up. Not because I believed her, but because I didn't know what to say anymore. Over the next few days, Carol was cold. She smiled and nodded to neighbors dropping off flowers. But behind closed doors, she was hard and quiet. No tears, no warmth, just silence and sharp words. Something felt off. She acted like she was doing what needed to be done, but it didn't feel real. Her grief, if it was there, felt fake, like she was playing a part. I started to wonder, was this how she really felt? Or was this who she always was? And I was only just seeing it. Every time I looked at her, I remembered how she laughed when I cried, how she tossed away Dad's things like they were old newspapers, how she shut me down the moment I tried to talk about my pain. And that's when I realized this wasn't grief, this was control, and I was done letting her control mine. A few days after the funeral, I returned to my dad's home office. It still smelled like him, coffee, leather, and the faint scent of his aftershave. My mum hadn't touched a single thing in there, probably because she never cared about that part of his life. To her, it was just David's mess. I stepped over a stack of books and sat down at his old wooden desk. The drawers were packed with folders, bills, receipts, and scribbled notes. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, maybe just a way to feel close to him again. But deep down, I was hoping to find answers, because something didn't sit right with me. Mum had said everything in the will went to her, No mention of me, no mention of the cabin Dad loved, nothing. But Dad wasn't like that. We were close. He always told me, that cabin will be yours one day. And yet, when the lawyer read the official will, it was like I didn't even exist. I pulled out a faded yellow folder tucked behind a stack of old bank statements. Inside, I found several pages clipped together, labeled Draft, Last Will and Testament. My hands started to shake. I read through it slowly, making sure I wasn't misunderstanding anything. It was dated just 3 months ago, recent, and right there in black and white, it said that the lakeside cabin, the one we used to visit every summer, was to go to me. It also left me most of his life insurance and a portion of his savings. The tone of the document felt like my dad, thoughtful, fair, and full of love. This wasn't the same will my mother had submitted to probate, not even close. My chest tightened. Why would she hide this? I took a photo of every page with my phone just in case. Then I put everything back exactly as I found it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the letter Dad had written me, the one I'd found at the cabin. If anything happens to me, Carol will try to take it all. Fight her if you must. He had warned me, so I did what I had to do. I called my father's lawyer, Mr. Gaines. When I told him what I found, he was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Lauren, I need you to come into my office. Tomorrow. Bring the document." That's when I knew I wasn't imagining things. My mum hadn't just been cold. She had hidden something huge, and I was ready to find out exactly what. The cabin was deep in the woods, tucked beside a quiet lake that looked exactly like I remembered. I hadn't been there since I was a teenager. My dad and I used to come here every summer, fishing, campfires, laughing until we fell asleep under the stars. Mum never came. She always said she hated bugs and silence. It took me almost 4 hours to drive there. My hands trembled as I unlocked the door. The place was dusty and untouched, but it felt warm, safe, like a hidden piece of him still lived here. I walked through the small living room and into the bedroom. Everything was exactly how we had left it that last summer. Dad's flannel blanket folded on the couch, a photo of us fishing still sitting on the shelf. I sat on the bed and cried for a long time. Then I noticed a small metal box tucked behind the nightstand. It wasn't locked. Inside were old photographs, me and Dad, smiling and silly, arms around each other. I couldn't stop the tears. He'd kept all of this. Not a single picture of my mum, just us. Under the photos was a folded piece of lined paper. It was his handwriting. I unfolded it slowly. The letter began, "Lauren, if you're reading this, then something's happened to me. I hope it was peaceful, but if it wasn't, I need you to know the truth." I kept reading, heart pounding. "Carol doesn't love this cabin. She doesn't love much. She'll try to take it all. Everything I worked for. She's good at pretending, but don't let her fool you. Fight her if you must. I've tried to protect you the best I could. I just hope this gives you strength." My breath caught in my throat. All this time, I'd felt crazy, like maybe I was overreacting, imagining things, but I wasn't. My father had known. He'd seen it too, and he'd left me this. Proof, love, a warning. I folded the letter carefully and tucked it into my jacket. I stared out at the lake and whispered, "I won't let her win." And for the first time in days, I felt calm, because now I had something stronger than anger or suspicion. I had the truth. I didn't rush. I took my time, gathering every piece of evidence, every paper, every photo, every memory that proved my father meant for me to have a part of his life, not be erased from it. The draft will, the photos from the cabin, the handwritten letter warning me about my mother. I even found emails from Dad, sent just weeks before his death, talking about how excited he was to update the will and finally make sure Lauren is protected. All of it painted a clear picture. My mom had lied. I found a local probate attorney, Mr. Armand. He was patient and kind, listening without interrupting as I laid everything out. When I handed him the letter my dad had written, he read it twice before looking up at me. "You have a strong case," he said. "If what you're saying is true, and this draft was intentionally withheld, we're looking at fraud, suppression of a valid testament. That's serious." It was like a weight lifted off my chest. Someone believed me. Someone who could help. We filed the petition quietly, without warning my mother. I didn't want to give her time to spin the story or destroy more evidence. The paperwork was submitted to the probate court, formally challenging the will she had filed. In it, we asked the court to recognize the draft will as David's final intent, to investigate the timing of her actions, and to freeze the estate until everything could be reviewed. I knew it wouldn't take long for her to find out, but I wasn't ready for what came next. 2 days later, I was sitting on my couch, half watching TV, when someone banged on the door. Not knocked. Banged. It was her. Carol stormed in like a thundercloud, waving the court notice in her hand, her face twisted in fury. "What is this, Lauren? Are you seriously trying to steal from me? From your own mother?" I stayed calm. "I'm standing up for what Dad wanted." Her voice rose. "You ungrateful little brat. After everything I've done for you. You mean after pretending I didn't matter? After lying to me about Dad's will? I found the truth, Mum. I found his truth." She laughed, bitter and sharp. "That letter. That cabin. You think that changes anything? You don't know how this world works." But I did. I was learning quickly. "You don't scare me anymore," I said, my voice steady. "You tried to take everything. Now you'll have to answer for it." She stood there, speechless for the first time. Her mask had cracked, and I could see the fear behind her eyes. Without another word, she turned and slammed the door behind her. And just like that, the quiet war between us became a public battle. But this time, I wasn't alone. I had proof. I had the law. And I had my father's voice guiding me every step of the way. The courtroom was cold, quiet, and tense. I sat at the front with my attorney, heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear. My mother, Carol, was on the other side, dressed in black, face blank, acting every bit the grieving widow. But I knew better, and soon, everyone else would too. She took the stand first. With a steady voice and well-practiced sadness, she told the court that I was confused by grief and that I was trying to rewrite history to get more money. "My daughter never cared about her father's work," she said. "Now she wants to profit from his death." I clenched my fists, but stayed quiet. Let her talk. The truth was coming. Next, David's longtime lawyer, Mr. Henley, stepped up. He held a folder in his hands and looked directly at the judge. "David met with me 3 weeks before his death," he said. "He drafted a new will, which I have here. It was signed and witnessed, but never officially filed. He told me he wanted to make sure Lauren was taken care of. That cabin, the life insurance, those were specifically meant for her." Carol shifted in her seat, visibly uncomfortable. Her lawyer tried to dismiss the document, calling it just a draft. But then Mr. Henley added, "Mr. Ridge also sent an email to me the day before his death, confirming that this version reflected his final wishes." The courtroom fell silent. Then the final blow came. The bank manager took the stand. He explained how, just 2 days after my father died, Carol had emptied his personal savings, over $80,000, without informing the court or me. "She claimed she needed it for funeral costs," he said, "but no receipts were ever filed, and the money was moved into a private account under her name only." That was the moment the mask slipped. Carol's lawyer tried to object, but the damage was done. The judge leaned forward, clearly disturbed. I could see it in everyone's eyes. This wasn't grief, it was greed. As we stepped out of the courtroom that day, I didn't feel like I'd won anything yet, but for the first time, people were starting to see who my mother really was. And the truth was louder than any lie she could tell. Carol always prided herself on being the picture of strength. After my father's death, she wore her black dresses, showed up at church with red eyes, and told anyone who'd listen that she was managing the loss. Neighbors offered casseroles, friends sent sympathy cards. She milked their pity like it was a reward. But after the hearing, after my father's real will was revealed and the bank account lie exposed, the whispers began. People in the neighborhood who once brought her flowers now looked away. At the store, I overheard Mrs. Klein say, "Funny how Carol had time to redecorate her kitchen right after David passed." Small things, quiet doubts. The cracks were forming. Then came the next hearing. It was time for personal testimonies. My therapist, Dr. Feldman, was the first to speak. She had been treating me for almost 4 years, calm, professional, and composed. She looked directly at the judge as she spoke. "In my sessions with Lauren, there have been consistent reports of emotional invalidation from her mother," she said. "She often described experiences where her grief, opinions, or even basic needs were dismissed or mocked." Carol scoffed loudly, trying to brush it off, but the judge warned her to stay silent. Dr. Feldman continued, "These patterns are consistent with a form of covert emotional abuse. Lauren has struggled for years to be seen and heard in her own home." I kept my eyes low, but I could feel the weight of the truth finally taking shape in the room. When it was my turn, I stood slowly and faced the court. I spoke plainly, without tears. My mum didn't just ignore my grief, she shamed it. When my dad died, she told me I was weak for crying. She mocked me at the funeral, And now she's sitting here pretending to be the only one who lost someone. Carol muttered under her breath, lies. But the judge heard. Mrs. Ridge, he warned, one more interruption and you'll be removed. She clenched her jaw but said nothing. The longer the hearing went, the more uncomfortable she became. Her fingers twisted her scarf. Her legs bounced. Her voice, once strong and cold, started to tremble when she whispered to her lawyer. And by the end of the day, it was clear. Her carefully built image had shattered. Carol wasn't the grieving widow anymore. She was a woman exposed, cruel, manipulative, and desperately trying to keep control. And everyone was finally starting to see it. The courtroom was tense when I handed the judge the envelope. Inside was the letter I had found at the cabin, the one written by my father in his own shaky handwriting. It felt like I was holding a piece of him again, something real and personal, not legal paperwork or cold facts. My father wrote this before he passed, I said quietly. He wanted me to know the truth. I believe the court should hear it too. The judge opened the envelope, carefully unfolded the letter, and began to read aloud. To my daughter, Lauren, he started. I held my breath. I don't know when or how you'll read this, but if you are, something has happened to me. I'm writing this because I fear Carol may not do what's right. She's strong, but not always in the ways that matter. If she tries to take what's yours, I want you to fight. The cabin, the insurance. I left those things to you for a reason. Carol shifted in her seat. That letter could be fake. Mrs. Ridge, you will remain silent, the judge snapped. Carol sat back, fuming, but said no more. The judge continued. I stayed with Carol longer than I should have, mostly for appearances. I didn't want you to grow up in a broken home, but I see now the home was already broken in ways that mattered. You deserved better. If nothing else, know this. I saw you. I believed in you, and I wanted to set you free. The room was silent. No one moved. Even Carol seemed frozen in place. For the first time during this entire battle, I felt the full weight of my father's love. Not just the kind shown in quiet car rides or old photos, but in words, written down, meant to protect me, even after he was gone. The judge folded the letter and nodded slowly. This will be entered into evidence. I glanced over at Carol. Her face was pale. All her confidence, all her posturing, it was gone. And all I could think was, how, in the end, it wasn't my voice that shut her down. It was his, my father's final words. And they spoke louder than anything she could say. The courtroom was packed when the judge returned from deliberation. My heart pounded in my chest, but I kept my eyes on the floor, trying to stay calm. I had come this far. I had faced lies, manipulation, and betrayal. Now, all I could do was wait for the verdict. The judge cleared his throat. After reviewing all submitted evidence, including testimony from both parties, David Ridge's attorney, and the handwritten letter entered as Exhibit C, he paused. I find in favor of Lauren Ridge. I blinked. For a moment, I wasn't sure I had heard him right. The court recognizes the validity of the original will, which names Ms. Ridge as the primary beneficiary of the cabin property, the full life insurance payout, and 60% of Mr. Ridge's estate. The remaining 40% will remain with Carol Ridge as outlined. A wave of relief crashed over me. My father's wishes had been honored. Justice had been done. I looked over at Carol, whose face was tight and unreadable. Her hands were clenched in her lap. For once, she had no snide comment ready, no glare sharp enough to wound me. As the courtroom emptied, I walked toward the doors, head held high. I didn't want to gloat. I just wanted peace. But as I reached the hall, I heard her voice behind me. Lauren, wait. I turned. Carol stood there, for once looking small and unsure. Her eyes were red, and tears finally slid down her cheeks. Real ones. You're really going to walk away from me? She asked. After everything I've done for you. I stared at her. Done for me. I remembered the day of my dad's funeral, how she mocked my tears. I remembered how she tried to erase his memory, how she lied and fought to steal what wasn't hers. I gave you my whole life, she whispered. You were all I had left. You didn't treat me like that, I said, my voice steady. You wanted me to be quiet. You wanted me to forget. But I remembered, and I fought back. She took a step forward, reaching for my hand, but I stepped away. I needed a mother when Dad died, I said softly. But all I got was someone trying to take from me, and now it's too late. Her sobs grew louder, echoing in the hallway. But I turned and walked away. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel satisfied. I just felt free. I had finally stood up for myself, and no one, Not even my own mother could take that away from me. The lakeside cabin was quiet, just the way Lauren remembered it. Months had passed since the court ruling, and though the legal battle was over, the emotional weight still lingered. But instead of running from the pain, Lauren had chosen to turn it into something meaningful. The cabin, once filled with dust and silence, was now warm and alive. She had painted the walls in soft, calming colors. The old fireplace was restored. The bookshelf held stories about loss, healing, and strength. Outside, a new wooden sign read, "The Haven, a place for daughters to heal." Lauren had created a small retreat for women like her, daughters grieving in silence, carrying memories and pain the world didn't always understand. The first few guests came quietly, unsure of what they were seeking, but they left lighter, a little more whole, just like Lauren had hoped. Carol had tried to call a few times. Once, she even left a message saying, "I made mistakes, but you're still my daughter." Lauren listened, but never called back. Some wounds ran too deep to be fixed with late apologies. Her silence wasn't anger anymore. It was protection. It was peace. One crisp morning, Lauren stood at the edge of the lake with her father's letter in hand. The sun rose slowly, painting the sky in gold and orange. She read the words again, her father's handwriting soft and fading. "If anything happens to me, fight for yourself. You deserve more than silence. You deserve to be free." Tears slipped down her cheeks, not from sadness, but from love. He had seen her. Even when she didn't believe in herself, he had. And now, she was living the life he wanted for, honest, strong, and full of purpose. She folded the letter carefully and pressed it to her chest. "I miss you, Dad," she whispered, "but I'm okay now." Behind her, the cabin waited with warm coffee, kind voices, and stories yet to be shared. Ahead, the lake stretched wide and still, holding her reflection, stronger, wiser, and finally at peace. Lauren smiled. Grief hadn't broken her, it had built her. Do you think Lauren made the right choice by turning her pain into something beautiful and cutting off contact with her mother? Or should she have given Carol another chance? Tell me your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to hear from you. And if you enjoy powerful stories like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what comes next.